Welcome to the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Rose, and a big shout out to all the free spirits and independent thinkers out there. Thanks for tuning in. Today we have a great guest. His name is Greg Bogart, and he is an astrologer and a brilliant one. And he's also a psychotherapist with a PhD. He teaches at universities, and he is the author of, I think, 7 books. I'll confirm with him. A lot of books. 2 of them are on dream work. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Understanding your dreams, learning how to interpret them, using them to advance your growth, and on and on. It's a great subject. All right. Come on board, Greg.
Hi, Kathy.
Hello. Thanks for coming on. I know Greg through astrology. I've heard his lectures. He's really wonderful in so many ways. And a very sensitive psychotherapist with a deep, deep wisdom that shines through. So I'm really excited to talk to you about dreams today, a favorite topic of mine. Your 2 books that I've read are Dream Work in Self-Healing and Dream Work in Holistic Psychotherapy of Depression. You have the copies. Great. Dream Work in Self-Healing. And the other one, Dream Work in Holistic Psychotherapy of Depression. People can order those on Amazon, right?
They can.
Yeah. Okay. And you've written 5 other books. Most of those were about astrology. Is it,
Yes.
Am I correct that it's 5 others, a total of 7 books?
It's more like 10, but some of them are second editions that expanded into new books. But yes, a couple of 4 astrological books are in print.
Very prolific. And your books are great. I have your astrology books. They're wonderful. All right. So let's dive in. You use dream analysis quite a bit in your psychotherapy practice, right?
It is one of the main methodologies I use to get to a deeper understanding of past traumas, the whole course of the life story, material that needs to be revisited, but also what's emerging, what's coming up, what is potential. And I love to combine astrology with dreams to look at correspondences between birth chart symbolism, transit symbolism, and then what comes up in dream narratives and dream characters.
It's interesting because I'm an active dreamer. I mean, sometimes I wake up and I'm tired from dreaming because I dream all night. And last night I had a dream with some astrology symbolism. I was dreaming of bow and arrows, shooting the arrows at something which I know is Sagittarius, and what I relate to Sagittarius is connected to strong opinions. And that was the theme of the dream, about the strong opinions going on in the world right now and conflicting. Anyway, it was interesting. And I woke up thinking, well, that's just perfect today because I'm having you as a guest talking about dreams.
So are you having any interesting Mars transits?
No, not at the moment. I'm not. You would think so with that. This is more related to what's currently going on politically right now and the intensity of people shooting arrows at each other on one hand, but the strong opinions where people can't seem to meet in the middle or hear each other and so forth.
Yes, this eclipse was conjunct Uranus. And the sun is conjunct Uranus today.
Yes.
So there is a lot of social change in the winds.
Yes. And isn't it fascinating how our brains speak to us in symbols through dreams? So I want to ask you a few questions. First of all, how many times have you worked with people who say, I don't dream at all. I never remember my dreams?
Many times. And some people don't really have the same access to the unconscious, but it's interesting how often if you tell someone, well, if you happen to remember a dream, do jot it down. And then they come back and then they have some really intense dream image. It might only be a little fragment, but it's always meaningful. I remember one gentleman who said, oh, I never dream. And he'd had a recent breakup. And he had a dream that he was on his hands and knees at the foot of his bed, potting a cactus plant. And the cactus plant had so much meaning for him because it was prickly, and he had been someone had broken up with him because they thought he was unpleasant and prickly. But more importantly, he said, a cactus is a plant that can live in a desert with very little water and finds its juice within its own body. Mm-hmm. That was an amazing message to him, to find wholeness, joy, juice within himself. So yes, I've had many people who say, I don't remember my dreams, but if you prompt them, and when we need a dream, it will pop up, it will pop into awareness.
Yes, and I imagine you find people with repeating themes, repeating dreams that come up. How many times have you had a patient who says, "Oh, I have this same dream that comes up. Maybe there's some slight variation in the dream, but it's the same thing over and over and over for years"?
My opinion is that a recurring dream is a message that hasn't been digested. Mm. That when we take in the message of those dreams that repeat, we no longer need that message. The dreams will change. So on the other side of it is the fact that the dream may reflect some core symbolism in the birth chart. So if you have a Sun-Saturn aspect in your birth chart, you might recurrently have dreams with Saturnine themes, Saturnine people.
Yeah, I have a friend who repeatedly, she's a Virgo, and she was born during the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Virgo. And she has dreams about bathrooms, dirty bathrooms, disgusting bathrooms, gross bathrooms. And it's a theme that comes back over and over and over again, elimination processes and, over and over. And it certainly reflects that part of her chart. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And don't you find people develop a dream language as if their unconscious is trying to get them to understand how their dreams are going to communicate?
Yes, we each evolve our own personal dream symbolism with characters that represent different subpersonalities, different facets of our natal chart and configuration. And while we have what are called the archetypes, the universal themes that are shared by everyone because they represent the experiences of human beings over millennia, but yet we have our unique appearances of the archetypes, unique characters and narratives that unfold in dreams.
And they can show up over and over again in order to make it more efficient, it seems. For me, that's what happens. Certain symbols will come up again and again because it's like the fastest and easiest way to get the message to me.
So what's an example of one of those symbols?
I suddenly understand there's a part of my house that I had forgotten about, like a complete wing, many, many rooms that I hadn't visited forever. Or, I'll suddenly realize, my God, I have 6 more bedrooms in this house, or, a whole suite. I forgot about it over and over again. And it hasn't been cleaned. It's usually dusty,
So does that remind you of some forgotten part of yourself that needs attention, that you want to bring back to life?
Yes. And it's usually when I've been working too hard and I haven't played enough. I haven't been creative enough. I haven't attended to myself enough. And my unconscious knows if it brings that dream in, it's going to get my attention because it's very uncomfortable. Dusty rooms I've forgotten about that I'm not utilizing within myself. Yeah. Ooh. But what about future dreams? How many of your patients talk to you about dreams where they've actually predicted the future or have seen the future or have seen things that then have occurred later in their life?
A few times. A few times I've seen dreams that seem to be foreshadowings of what was coming up. One thing I like to do is go back through my dream journals, and I'll look at like a year of material, and I'll look at how what the dreams portrayed anticipated what was coming up in the approaching weeks and months after that. So I do that on a kind of constant basis. And yes, we see little images of the icebergs that are emerging out of the water of the future. But in terms of precognitive and predictive dreams, I haven't seen that many. There is a book by my mentor, Stanley Krippner, called Extraordinary Dreams. And that book goes a lot into precognition in dreams. For example, Krippner, back in the 60s, had a dream foreshadowing, or it seemed to be an image of the assassination of President Kennedy. So that was rather striking. I myself have not had those dreams. I've had many people with dreams that have a kind of apocalyptic imagery, dreams about the end of the world and things of this nature. And I tend to think that those are more symbolic than literal, that something in their life is ending, or there is a sense of anxiety and dread about the state of the earth or humanity, which is well-founded. But I don't think they're literal portrayals of the future.
I have a lot of future dreams, literal dreams that then specifically happen, but that's been normal for me my entire life. It seems to be my pattern. So let's talk about having the dream journal. That's a regular habit for you, right? You've incorporated it into your routine?
Since the age of 14.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow.
Yes.
And so you can go back and look at dreams from early on. Wow.
I have all of the journals. It's like an archaeology of the soul to go back. And it is an integrative process to work with the images from the past and see their present resonance. To me, those dreams are always true. They still have meaning for me. So I hold them like pearls, like treasures. And I've mined a great deal of meaning and emotion from most of those dreams. So they all have helped constitute who I am, what I've tried to make of my life.
Yeah, I haven't developed the habit yet of writing mine down. I try to stay still and remember and repeat it over and over, so I'll remember it once I get up. But
what I recommend to my clients and so forth and friends is write them down longhand in a notebook. If you don't write them down immediately, you will forget most or all of the dream. And trying to put them on a phone doesn't work well, because what you want is to write them down and then be able to work the dream, to break it down into its component parts, look at each image, each character, each action in the dream, each scene, each setting, and each outcome, and make meaning from it, make pictures and doodles and drawings and mandalas with the dreams. And if you put it on a phone, you'll never do that. You just won't. And similarly, in the old days, we used to use cassette recorders, and I would turn over in the middle of the night and hit play and record and try and record the dreams. But the two problems with that are you get a long thing that most people won't go back and then transcribe it. But more importantly, most of the time I would end up falling asleep in the middle. So I would hear 15 minutes of snoring instead of the dream. So personally, I recommend the handwritten journal. There's a man named Ira Progoff who wrote books about working with the journal as a spiritual practice. And so that has always influenced me. The journal is like your best friend, and you can say anything to the journal. You can reveal everything, things that you're not going to share in public, but it can be felt, acknowledged, and worked with. That's the nature of shadow work. So we have to dig into the places that we reject, places that are contrary to our public face, our persona, how we want to present ourselves in the world. But to be whole, we have to know all sides, all facets. So that's why I think the dream journal is incredibly important.
And to your point about writing it longhand, I have always had the sense that what you write longhand accesses a different part of your brain than even typing, and certainly than speaking. And it's like it grounds it. It brings it into the earth plane in a different way than typing or speaking.
Well, I completely agree. And for me, creative writing is always done longhand. Mm-hmm. But I know that there are people of current generation who are raised more just using computers, and I understand that. The main thing is to capture a text of the dream that you can add to it, whether that's on a computer or in a written journal or notebook. Doesn't matter, as long as one can contemplate the dream and chew it over and digest all the different various things that it means. That's the great thing about dreams. They don't mean just one thing. They have multiple levels of meaning at the same time. They're incredibly rich.
How often do you find people telling themselves in the dream that they're dreaming, the conscious dreaming?
Waking up in the dream, becoming mm-hmm. aware. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, that's called lucid dreaming. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful thing when it happens. I don't try to use techniques to induce a lucid dream. Stephen LaBerge has done great work showing how you can practice lucid dreaming. And this also relates to what the Tibetan Buddhists call dream yoga, where you try to retain the state of lucid consciousness to realize that all phenomena are like a dream. Everything in reality is dreamlike and ephemeral. And I think those are great practices. But I'm more in the Jung school that says, just let it happen. Just let the unconscious speak. Don't try to control it. Don't try and manipulate the dream. Just let it happen spontaneously. And that's very satisfying for me. Mm-hmm. And the other concept that Jung introduced is the idea of a dialogue between the ego and the unconscious. So in a sense, we're receptive, we're listening, we're trying to understand what the unconscious is trying to tell us about ourselves, about our life, about our situation, about our potentials. And it's the same thing with astrological meditation. We think, what is the universe trying to tell me with this birth chart, the way it's organized? What is the universe intending from this transit, this progressed aspect? How can I grow with this? So the two processes are very closely linked in my personal work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very purposeful, very mindful, not so much predictive or event-oriented, but more, how am I going to grow? How am I going to learn? What is this about? Yes.
What task does the dream show me?
Yeah.
So when you told me about your dreams about arrows, you had one association to it. My association to it is that to shoot an arrow is to make an assertion. So as a teacher, as a public teacher, one has, the arrow to assert a truth. Mm-hmm.
It's so fascinating because I've had a series of dreams like this because I am really yearning for a neutral space to try to see all perspectives, which is very difficult because we all have bias. We all have our own opinions. But I'm yearning to try to be like the eagle on the high branch that can observe and have that perspective and not engage in the intensity of opinion that's out there. And probably it's just I'm feeling on the news, and social media, people throwing arrows at each other and attacking each other for their perspective. And sometimes it feels like mankind is not getting anywhere with that polarity. Yeah. What about, I have a client who says that over and over, they have dreams where they discover in the dream that they have no clothing on. They start off not knowing it, and all of a sudden they look around and everybody else is clothed and they are not. And I always thought that had something to do with that, with feeling exposed, feeling naked in front of humanity, basically. But do you have people who have those themes?
Yes, that's not an uncommon
Yeah,
dream image. And on the one hand, there's the idea of nakedness as authenticity, not having artifice in one's presentation. So authenticity, vulnerability is a theme, but also in Jungian terms, the clothing is persona. It's how we put ourselves together to meet the world in different roles, in different situations. So sometimes I think being naked in dreams represents some uncertainty or ambiguity about one's persona, one's role, the need to clothe oneself to have a more defined set of roles in the world, to feel clothed, costumed, and at the same time, everything has a personal meaning. So I knew a judge. She was a prominent judge, and she dreamed that she was wearing her judge's robe, but she was completely naked underneath. And what that meant to her was, everybody treats me with a certain respect and fear. They always treat me like the judge, like I'm in my role all the time. They don't know the real me, she said. And the dream was a message to her to find the real, authentic, embodied person underneath the role.
Yes, interesting.
So nakedness, could have different meanings for different people, but those are a few things that come to mind.
Yeah, one client continually said, every time I have a naked dream and I realize I'm naked, nobody else is, I feel so much embarrassment and shame. And so she had a theme that would go through about shame, and we had to discuss that. Mm-hmm. And it did show up in the natal chart, obviously, through planetary patterns. Yeah. How many times have you worked with somebody who comes in and tells you about a dream? You discuss it, you're working with the theories or the symbols, the therapeutic process, and then they have an extension of that dream, like they take it to the next chapter.
Yeah.
The same story develops, right?
Not uncommon at all.
Yeah.
And when you have this dialogue with the unconscious, it'll show you one thing or present certain messages, and then it'll move it forward. And the idea with individuation is we feel like something is leading us forward. Something is guiding us toward ourselves, toward our future, towards what we can be. And so it goes in stages. So we get fed certain nutrients through dreams, little chunks of meaning, and then we move forward. So, for me, dreams about losing musical instruments are recurring themes, or musical instruments being stolen or underwater. So, it relates to my quest to remain connected to being a musician, despite the fact that it's, it occupies a limited amount of my time and bandwidth, but it's still, it's submerged, it's lost, but I'm still, I'm always trying to find those instruments.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think we have a lot of dreams, or at least I do, about health and healing, where my body is actually talking to me. About 3 months ago, I had a dream that was just a terrible nightmare. And I don't usually have nightmares, but I woke up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. or something, and with this powerful memory of the dream where soldiers were storming my house and trying to get in with big machine guns. And I was trying to hide. And then they came to the front door and I told him, you can't enter, kind of like Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings when he said, you shall not pass. And they backed off, but then they broke in anyway. And they were just mowing, I was hiding, but they were shooting everything. I woke up, heart pounding, and 15 minutes later realized I was going into a fever and sick.
Wow.
And so the soldiers were the germs. And my system was trying to hold them off in the dream, but then they finally broke through. Yeah, it was interesting. It was that aha. And I remember laughing, even though I didn't feel well, saying, how incredible our brain is that it can communicate to us what's happening in the body as it's happening.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I would think that there's another meaning to the dream or other dimensions, because whenever dream characters are trying to break in, it's very common. Somebody is chasing me, someone's trying to break into the house. Recently, I had a dream of several animals that were like trying to break into my house. And we say that that's representative of the shadow, that something is trying to connect to us. Something wants to make a connection to us. And we think, no, but it wants us to be connected to it. And it seems like to be in the kind of role you're in as a teacher, one has to have the strength to stand up in the battle, in the arguments, in the debates, right?
And I do a lot of traveling in dreams. I talk to clients in dreams. I get specific information many times through conversations. Even before I've had a client, sometimes I will travel to them before our session and talk to them and have information that's ready when we have our consultation.
Wow.
It's very efficient.
In Sufism, they say that the spiritual guide meditates on the student, meditates on the client. Maybe you're accessing that in your dreams. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's interesting. So dream work is incredibly fascinating to me. So when you have a client, what process do you use to help them understand? What questions do you ask so that they can start interpreting their dream or making sense of it?
It's really pretty simple. We take the dream, we start at the beginning, we look at the setting. Where is the dream taking place? What does that remind you of? How does that relate to your situation, your past, your present, your imagined future, that setting? What happens in the dream? What actions are there? And what does it remind you of? Who does this person remind you of? What kind of persons? Like, okay, somebody's driving the car. Who is driving the car? How are they dressed? What kind of person is it? What do they remind you of? What part of yourself? What part of your family? Who is this person? So we start to relate to every image as somehow related to our situation. It's a portrayal of our current situation. And dreams combine material from memory. There's a certain amount of memory processing that occurs in dream life. But then there is creative imagination, where we recombine those already processed experiences and make something new out of it. So there's poetry in dreams, and they're not just literal recollections of past events. So we want to try and understand what is the overall arc of the story in the dream, and where does that how does that relate to what's happening? I think it's important to gain some familiarity with the language of dreams, which is similar to the language of myth. So, for example, a common theme in dreams is being, in transit, being on a bus, being on a plane, going in a car, going. So this relates to the theme of the journey, the odyssey, the quest of life, the course of time. Another common theme in dreams is I'm back at my parents' house. I'm back at the home I grew up in. I'm at mom and dad's place. That is so common. So we work with the house. We work with if there's a house in a dream, who lives in the house? What kind of atmosphere is in this house? How does it relate to my house, my inner atmosphere? Bodies of water, very common image in dreams. I think being back at mom and dad's place and being in bodies of water and being in a vehicle, these are three very typical dream images. But anyway, in terms of the process, this is it. I'll ask a question about one character, and then we might, it might go in a lot of different directions. It might remind you of several people, several recurring experiences. Maybe there's an angry person in the dream, and who does that remind you of? Who is angry in your life?
There's so much information to be gained here. So much. It's like going into another realm. And then there are the dreams that I used to have when I was young, which I have asked to please come back. I think when I was young and less cluttered with life experience or information or accumulated traumas or whatever, but I used to have the flying dreams where I could run and then fly. Literally fly, just put out your arms like Superman and fly. And those were so joyous, so wonderful, and shape-shifting dreams where I could shape-shift into other animals.
So could we just pause over what you just said? Because to me, dreams are permanent. They're like timeless truths. So there's a part of you that is still weightless. There's a part of you even now that is capable of flight. It's like a intuition of your spiritual nature that can fly, that is transcendent, that is light.
Thank you for implanting that. Yes.
And then the second one you said was
shape-shifting.
Shape-shifting, right. Changing roles through the life cycle. We can take new forms, new versions of ourselves. So to me, that's part of the beauty of doing dream work is we don't have to have the dream again. Is if we make something of ourselves, if we change ourselves, our substance is altered by the feeling of a dream or the realizations we have from a dream, that's permanent. That stays with us.
That's beautiful. Yes. Good point.
So there's a way that we're extracting essences from dreams, just as we do from transits. You go through a transit. If you go through it consciously, you're changed. You don't have to have that transit again. You've been through that. If you've integrated it. Yeah.
You said I don't remember which book, but I wrote it down, squeeze every drop of juice from the dream image. Oh, I loved that. That was so wonderful. Squeeze it, and you do that through free association, I think, with
chewing it over.
Chewing it over.
And the other thing is finding a personal interpretation. Now, dream dictionaries and all of that can be helpful, but honestly, I never refer to them because each person's dream image has a personal meaning. A snake doesn't mean one thing. You can't just look it up in a dream dictionary and know what that snake is really about for you. So we need to follow our own associations.
Yes, and I'm glad that you just mentioned that because I haven't talked about the Maverick mentality yet, but that's what I was going to bring up in the Maverick approach. This idea of thinking for yourself, this idea of feeling your inner authority to be able to solve problems or come up with answers follows that. And people are so fast to type into a Google search, what does this symbol mean in my dream? Which is taking away from the digestion of what it means to them and trusting that that answer is within them and can come forward uniquely. Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
I haven't met anybody that can't do that.
Wonderful.
If you know, if you stand with them, ask them the question, you know, what does this woman in the dream look like? What kind of person is she? Who does that remind you of? Does it remind you of your mother, your sister, your lover, yourself? Who is this? And so there's a creativity and spontaneity in the process. And also it's just amazingly fun.
Yes.
The dream images exaggerate. The dream narratives they're like cartoons. They're incredibly funny, even the ones that are gross and, you know, seem scary and unpleasant. And in my dream books, I give quite a few examples of books that on the surface are quite unpleasant, quite difficult, shocking in their imagery. But if you kind of stand in the fire, as it were, if you are willing to look at what the dream might have to say to you, the insights are often astonishing and brilliant. But sometimes dreams have to startle us to get our attention. That's
the nightmares, particularly for people, and people who have recurring nightmares who then are afraid to go to sleep because they're afraid they're going to have the nightmare again. I'm sure you've dealt with
compassion for those people, but I encourage those people to just work with the dream, see what it's got to, what its message might be.
I've had many clients say that they will have recurring nightmares of something chasing them. And we work on developing a little bit more Mars, perhaps, you know, the fight back response, the assertive energy. And they find that eventually they can, they'll have the same dream and they'll turn around and they'll just say, stop, or they'll confront the situation.
Well, there's that piece of it. And then there is, who is chasing me?
Yes.
What animal is chasing me? What person? What does that represent? It's often the shadow, but it's often something we need to be whole. You see?
Yeah.
I had a dream of a tiger chasing me, trying to break into my house. But when I thought about it, a tiger is a magnificent animal. A tiger has pride. A tiger is not weak. And that strength of a tiger is something I need in my constitution to be whole.
So embracing it. I have another question that I have always found to be interesting in my own dreams, because I feel dreaming is so right brain, not left brain. And I have recurring dreams where if I try to call somebody on a phone, I can't type the numbers in. Anything that has to do with math or numbers, I cannot do. And it will become a totally long frustration in the dream where I finally in the dream will say, screw it, you know, it's not working. And then I wake up and realize you can't do left brain things in the dream necessarily, or at least I can't. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, but then there's the question of what does it mean that I can't make the call? I can't get through. I can't convey my message. Where is communication obstructed or?
There's that, but it's anything having to do with numbers and logic. And because it might be writing down numbers, it might be doing a math. There are many dreams I have where I'm trying to do math. Of course, you could say, well, why isn't it adding up? But I can't do numbers in the dreams. And I think that for me anyway, it's my right brain is so active.
It reminds me of when we had to do charts by hand with all the calculations. Wasn't that fun?
That was fun. I've had dreams, the specific precognitive dreams many, many, many times, or I'll have friends who will come and talk to me in dreams and tell me specific things about what's happening in their life. So I seem to do a lot of soul travel and actually go talk to people in dreams, because then the next day or a week later, I can confirm those specific things that are happening in their life. I once had a friend who had a baby, and we were waiting for the birth of this baby. And in the dream, she said, I just had my baby, by the way. And I called her the next day, and she had had her baby the night before, right when I dreamt it.
Well, it's a reminder that we're connected beyond visible space and time. There is literally no separation, which is kind of a mind-boggling realization. I mean, it's not uncommon to have dreams about people passing before they actually pass. I have had that experience, or other communications indicating somebody was about to pass. So those are not uncommon. And it seems like we're in the realm of Neptune. We're in the realm where the worlds intersect and there's connection, what Stan Groff calls non-local connections between people and events. So in dreams, we tap into that truth.
Yeah, it is so fascinating. And if you give yourself permission to explore what you are capable of on all those other dimensional levels, the dreams become a source of information, not just for psychodynamic, personal, therapeutic process, but sometimes even larger than that. I'm a Reiki master. I've been a Reiki master since 1983, 84, something like that. And I find that many times I will go do Reiki on people, even people I haven't talked to in a long time, but I'll wake up and realize I've done healing work on somebody. And then I'll call them and find out how they're doing. And they'll say, I had a dream about you last night.
Really?
Yeah. And so those kinds of things, I think it's just also the universe just wants to amuse me.
Well, in doing astrological work, therapeutic work, the psyche of the practitioner and the client connect. Yes. They intersect, they influence each other. This is one of Jung's brilliant insights, is that the process affects both people chemically, alchemically, if you will. And so we dream about each other. We influence each other. We learn from each other. I know this about you, that you learn from every client. And so do I. It's like we get our inspiration from what people overcome and what they face with great courage.
Yeah, it's amazing. So the soul that we are, which is unlimited and everlasting, is busy even in the dream state. It gets out there and it meets people and connects and talks and travels through time and talks to ancestors, talk to people who have passed on. Do you find some people recall specific scents or tastes, that they smell certain things in dreams, or they taste certain tastes in dreams?
A few times I've heard that. Some people have dreams that are full of sensory detail.
Yes.
I remember a woman with a lot of planets in Taurus in her chart. She had this dream about this cozy cottage, and she described every detail of the cottage and the color of the fur of the cat that was sitting on a fence. And that was remarkable.
The textures, the scent. Yeah. And I love in your books, you talk about dream mandalas, how to create the dream in a mandala, which of course speaks my language. I'm a mandala artist. Yeah. Yes. And that came from, you extended that from Jung's theories, right? But didn't you add a lot to it in your own vocabulary?
I think it's fair to say that's one original contribution I've made.
Wonderful.
This idea of mapping the dream in a circular form, where you position different characters or images or facets of the dream, and then see the connections, literally draw lines connecting parts of the dream that are typically contrasting, polarized, oppositional. So you see the charged opposites, and that contributes to the experience of unification through holding the charged polarities within us. So in the book Dream Work and Self-Healing, I depict dreams in this way. It's how I do dream work. I'm not saying this is how everyone should do it. It's my personal method. It's not terribly artistically sophisticated, but it's just a way of containing all of the material of the dream within a circle, which represents psychic wholeness.
Well, I think it's brilliant. I absolutely think it's brilliant. And I encourage people to get that book and look at that process, because it stood out in my mind, that visual depiction of all the elements of the dream. And I know how powerful mandalas are and how they speak to us. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm also trying to assert, if you will, is that doing dream work is a potent antidepressant. It's an effective way to get to the heart of what is making us sad, discouraged, resigned, depressed, depleted. It is potent and revitalizes us. So this is described in the book Dream Work in Holistic Psychotherapy of Depression. And it is my firm belief that if people could take up a spiritual practice, maybe some kind of movement or yoga, and align with their astrological map and work with the unconscious through dream work, it would alleviate a lot of the symptoms of depression that so many people suffer from. This is just how I work, what I try and offer clients as an alternative treatment approach. But I think it's got great potential, I think. And then for people who are into astrology, the combination of astrology and dreams, see, that's described in this book.
Astrology's higher octaves. Yes.
The union of astrology and dream work is the culmination for me of the union of astrology with depth psychology. Mm-hmm. And where these two forms of symbolism meet to create a sense of meaning, meaningful insight, meaningful impetus to action in our lives.
My guest, Greg Bogart, and his amazing books on dreams, his amazing books on astrology. There's a wealth of wisdom there. Google his name. You'll see all of his dreams, not his dreams. You'll see all of his books.
There is a website called www.dawnmountain.com. That's DAWN, dawnmountain.com, where all the books are described.
Wonderful. I'd like to have you on another time. So we could say bye for now until we meet again.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.